I'm talking to Angela Terry, the founder and CEO of One Home, which is a social enterprise that helps people fight against the worst effects of climate change. Here in the UK, Angela, what are the worst effects of climate change? Are we seeing it around us already? Is it going to get worse, and in what way?
Yes, absolutely. So we are putting lots of carbon pollution into the atmosphere, which is making our planet hotter, both our atmosphere and our oceans. So the damage we are doing is irreversible, which is why urgent action on climate change is so important. So the changes we're starting to see, the global warming is on average just over 1 degree since pre-industrial times. But that doesn't sound much to people, but what's happening is as the world warms up, the extremes are, in terms of our weather events, are increasing. So, for example, the polar regions are warming up twice as fast as on land. So the extreme weather events we're seeing, both in terms of heat waves in the summer and droughts, will become more often, more frequent, but also last longer as our weather patterns start to get stuck, is the simplest way to describe it.
Tell us some examples of, for example, weird weather in the UK that we're getting already, and how will it get worse?
Yeah, so the last decade was the hottest decade on record. We keep breaking these weather events in terms of rainfall, drought, temperatures, and storms. So we are seeing more and more extreme weather. Now, the UK in particular is going to have hotter and drier summers and milder and wetter winters. And it is those wetter winters that bring with it that increased risk of flooding. So 1 in 6 homes in the UK are at high risk of flooding. We have quite a lot of water scarcity on the other extreme in the summer, especially in our cities, that we have per capita less water than in Israel, in London. So it's quite shocking how vulnerable we are to these changes, both in terms of growing food, keeping our rivers and streams healthy, and keeping us healthy, because especially vulnerable people like children, pregnant women, elderly people, extreme heat makes it very hard for them to cool down. And that's where that health risk of heat stroke and heat stress comes in. So we've got these very hot and dry summers with these wet, milder winters in general, and those trends are set to increase and become more extreme. So we have more extreme weather events and stronger storms, etc. And it's when we have these storms, we have these downpours. For every 1 degree hotter the atmosphere becomes, it can hold 7% more water. So when it does rain, we get these deluges that turn our roads into rivers and flood people's homes, etc. But probably the most frightening impact of climate change is sea level rise, because what's happening is as we heat the planet, the ice is melting on the glaciers, and both in Greenland and in Antarctica, and all that extra water is rushing into the oceans, and the oceans are heating up and expanding, and we have already seen sea level rise, but it is accelerating. So it's happening at the moment at about 5 millimeters a year. That does not sound much, but when you say that it was only 3 millimeters a year a decade ago, it is accelerating fast. And that's why we have to start to prepare for these extreme weather events and sea level rise. Because if you live around the coast, if you live in an area that's going to flood, it's only going to get worse. Therefore, making sure your home and your family and your pets are going to be safe in the event of a flood is really important.
What kind of precautions should we be taking for that?
So the key thing to do is to go to the Environment Agency alerts, check once you know. So one is to put your postcode in the website, the government website, and check if you are at risk of flooding. If you are, it is to sign up to those alerts. And it's also crucially to check your insurance to make sure your property and your contents are covered, and to have a plan like a grab bag with essentials, and a safe place to move your car to and your cells if you have to evacuate. So it's always hope for the best but prepare for the worst. There is something shocking like someone has to flood 3 times before they actually admit they're at high risk of flooding, because it's that safety that you've never flooded before, therefore it's not a problem. And if it does happen, you go, oh, it's just a one-off event and it can't possibly happen again. And people put back white carpets and sort of almost go into denial. Whereas if you rebuild, if you are unlucky to be flooded, if you rebuild with the fact that it might happen again, and use solid tiles and furniture, then you can wash everything down, sterilize it, dry out your house and get back in much quicker. So it's making sure you're prepared both to get out, but also to repair your house or your business as quickly as possible.
Angela Terry from One Home, thank you very much indeed.